Hello everyone and welcome. Just going to give you a quick run through today on our new ERM module. It will be quite a short one today, probably about 10 or 15 minutes, but just how to set it up and what it can do for you. So first thing to show is that your, by default, ERM will not be showing on your home screen. So you can see here there's no sign of our ERM module on the screen. To set this up, we need to do a couple of things, or need to check a couple of things. The first thing we need to do is to go into the administration. And if you just click on system preferences as a whole, down on the left-hand side, you can click on e-resource management. And then you can see that the ERM module is currently disabled. So we need to enable that, and we're going to save that preference. While we're also passing, you'll note that if you have EBSCO Holdings IQ, or if you have EDS, you can add your Holdings IQ and key, and therefore the ERM will actually just directly be able to manage your EBSCO content. I'll show you that in a little while. So I'm going to save that preference. And if I go back to home now, you'll note that the e-resource management module is now showing up at the bottom. It is worth noting, however, if I just go to another screen with staff permissions in there, that in order to still see the ERM, so I've turned it on in general, but the person themselves, the member of staff themselves, has to have permission to still work with ERM. The two sections really are acquisitions, and there's one for ERM as well. That's that one down here. So that one has to be ticked, or more easily, they have to be a super user. So if you have the access to all librarian functions ticked, they will also be able to work the ERM module. So I'm going to close that down a second, and then if we go back, and we're now going to take a look at the ERM module. So obviously it's for dealing with all your licenses, contracts, and usage of your electronic journals and databases. So let's take a look at what we have. So if I go into agreements here, these are the ones that we, on our demo system, I've added to the ERM module. And there's like quite an extensive list here. You'll notice that at the top of the screen, my search has also changed to an agreement search, but I can also search my licenses, my packages, and even individual titles that are held in my ERM. So if we first of all pick a particular agreement, I'm going to pick one we've already created here, but I'm going to make an amend to it so that we can see what's available when you set up an agreement. Oh, I don't want to delete. I want to amend the little one at the side. Okay, so this is for British History Journals. We've already got a vendor. We've got a description. You can set whether it's active, in negotiation, or currently closed. You could, if it is closed, you can say why you've decided to close that agreement. You can say whether it's a perpetual agreement, and then a renewal priority. So I'm going to put one in here which was missing before, and I'm going to say that we need to review this particular journal. Any license info can actually be added in there. So this is just general information. It's not linked to anything, but it might be things like this is a 3-user license, etc. And then we've got an agreement period. You can see that this one has ended, but I would like to extend that now to say that we've got it till the end of December next year. And if we do want to cancel, we've got to tell them by December this year. So I'm going to put that in there. Okay, and then any notes about the agreement period as well can be added. And you can have more than one period for that particular agreement. And then the users is very handy as well. These can be internal users, so they can be your members of staff, and those could be the ones that are particularly involved in this particular agreement, or you can add any contacts with the provider as well, so that if you know there's a certain person that you need to speak to, you can add them there. You can add any licenses that are attached, and you can add your related agreements. So related agreements are ones that are connected. So you might have a special offer where if you get one agreement, you get a discount on another, and that's where that would be included. And finally, you can add documents, and this can be actually physical copies that are scanned in, or it can be electronic documents connected to your agreement. And then we're going to submit that. And now if I go back to my history journals, I've now got a new status of review that is showing there for that agreement. So that's the sort of data that you can put in for your agreements. Licenses is very similar, except it's more general about each provider. So it tells you, so here's the information about what you've agreed, what you're allowed, how many users you're allowed to have, what your extension, what your period is for that agreement, etc. So a word about vendors as well. So each of the providers of your electronic resources is also linked in acquisitions. This is so that you can attach a cost to your electronic resources. And the idea is at the moment is that that cost is then reportable on, but also in the future, there's a development going on at the moment so that when we run the stats, which I'll show you in a little while, it will also give you a cost per use because it's attached to a cost in the acquisitions area. And that can be used whether you actually use acquisitions for ordering or not. Now let's have a look at the holdings. So these packages can, or individual titles can be local. This means that they are not attached to your EBSCO, and these are ones that you have brought in yourself. A little development that's happening sooner on ERM is that soon you will be able to import these records. So instead of having to physically go in and create each license, etc., you will be able to upload that as a CSV and pop it straight in. So that would be very handy. So the packages, yeah, these are local ones. Worth noting, if I just click on one, that it also tells you what titles are in each package. And you can also attach, again, any documents. So if this was, for instance, something from your local archive, you can attach images and so on. And then individual titles in the same way. So if I just pick one of these and go into edit, you can see that there's actually a great deal of information that we haven't bothered to fill in here, but it's quite extensive because it's to cover every base in terms of what you want to know about that contract or that particular subscription. So we've contained as much information as you could possibly need. But you don't, as noted, there's only really the title of it that is required to store it in the ERM. A quick word about EBSCO. So if I just search for Science Direct, which I know is one of our subscriptions with EBSCO, you'll note that we've only got one little tick here, and this is displaying what we have access to, what we have subscribed to within that particular title. So if I click on that one in particular, you will then see all the journals that are included within that package. And here's the handy bit. This is why it's linked to your EBSCO key and etc. And that's because I can untick any of these journals that I don't want to subscribe to anymore, and that will instantly remove them on my EBSCO list. So I don't have to externally go to EBSCO host to remove them. I can just tick on and off and it will automatically do that for me. Similarly with the titles. That's another way in. Same thing again. We can add and remove these as we require. So that's a bit about the connection to EBSCO. Now we're going to have a look at the data that's available. So this is the latest development for the ERM module. The data that's provided here is coming from counter reports from each of the providers. And that is done via a Sushi API link. Now, if you don't have a Sushi API for your particular provider, maybe it's an individual journal or whatever, you can actually manually load these from the provider via a CSV file. So you'd request them from the provider to give you as a CSV file, and you can still import them here so that you can add them to your data. So we've set up our providers, and these are the ones that we've set up to run automatically. And so you can do this as a overnight process, as a cron job, or you can run them manually. The interesting thing about here is it's showing when it was last run. And this is vital because even if you have them set up run automatically, it will not let you run the same report for the same period twice. It doesn't want to double up on the data. So it will give you an error if you run it for the same period so that you don't duplicate the data. So let's have a look at one of these that we've already set up. This one's for Wiley. You'll see on the end tab, these are all the times that particular report has been run. So if you'll note that these are all done by cron job rather than rather than by manually. And I can actually download that data individually. These reports will stay as long as you want them, or you can download and delete as you go along as part of your clearance process for your data. This is the area where you can bring in your manual load if you know you don't have an API link to that provider. And basically it tells you what titles are also associated with that provider as part of your package. So this is all linked to your licenses and agreements. So if I go back to our overall list, you'll notice that this one was last run on the 31st of May. So if I do want to run it manually, I know that I can just run it for the beginning of this month. If I click on the test button, all that does is it's particularly useful for the cron job ones, the automatic ones. It will tell you if that connection is still working. So that's just a quick check to know that your overnight processes are actually still linked up and working. But if I was to try and run it, it always asks you for a date to run from and to. And I'm not going to run it now because I don't want to mess up the dates for next time. But yeah, you then run it and you get the report. So let's have a look at some reports. I'm going to choose the Wiley one because I know that's got some data in there for you. Obviously, with this being our demo version, we very rarely actually access journals. So there's very few of them that have got any data in there for us. It would be a completely different matter for yourselves. So this is showing me all the titles that we have attached to that and how many times that item was used over the period. I can also change the date at the top. So if I've got several years, I can actually run a different year. You'll notice also that over on the right-hand side, you can export this data to another spreadsheet. So for instance, I could take that data and for an individual title, and I can work out the kind of information, impact information that I need to give to my management. So I've got here cost per use, for instance. So that's all just manipulating that in a spreadsheet. But as I mentioned earlier, the next stage of the development for ERM is to add a cost per use to this data itself. So when you run the report, it will be connected to acquisitions, which will include the cost of the item. And then based on this data that you're pulling through, it will tell you a cost per use. So yeah, that's about it in a nutshell. I hope that is useful, and we'll see you next time.